The first thing my neighbor said to me that morning wasn't good morning. It was, you need to stop poisoning your yard. And she said it while holding a grocery bag full of dead birds like it was evidence in a murder trial, like she'd been waiting for this moment. I remember just standing there with dirt on my hands, half kneeling next to my tomato plants, thinking she had to be joking. Except she wasn't smiling, not even a little. I'd been out there since maybe 8, just doing what I always do on Sundays, watering, trimming, talking to my plants like a crazy person. It's kind of my thing. Keeps me grounded, you know, and everything felt normal right up until I looked up and saw her standing at the fence, shoulders tight, eyes locked on me like I'd personally offended her. The bag crinkled when she lifted it slightly, like she needed me to hear it. And that's when I noticed what was inside, small shapes, feathers, limp little bodies pressed against the plastic. Dana, what is that? I asked, already feeling this weird drop in my stomach before she even answered. You tell me. She shot back, shaking the bag once. Not violently, but enough to make her point. I found 6 of them this morning, right along our fence. Again. That word stuck. I pushed myself up, wiping my hands on my jeans, trying to keep my voice calm, because honestly I had no idea what she was talking about. I don't use poison. I don't use anything like that. My garden's organic, you know that. She didn't respond right away, just stared at me like she was trying to decide if I was lying or just stupid. Then explain this, she said finally, her voice softer now, but somehow more unsettling. Because something is killing them. And it's coming from your side. I remember taking a step closer, instinctively, like I needed to see for myself, even though part of me didn't want to. She opened the bag a little wider, and the smell hit me first. Not rot exactly, but something off, chemical almost, mixed with that faint metallic scent that comes with dead things. There were sparrows mostly, maybe a finch or 2, all of them small, delicate, and completely still. I swear to you, I said, and I meant it, every word. I haven't put anything harmful in my yard. Nothing. Her expression shifted then, just slightly, like the anger was giving way to something else, fear, maybe. This is the 3rd time this month, she said, glancing back toward her house for a second. Always on Sundays. Always right here. My kids play along this fence, Caleb. They're out here barefoot half the time. That's when it really hit me, not just the birds, but what she was implying without saying it outright. The truth is, I had seen dead birds too. I hadn't told anyone because it didn't seem like a big deal at the time. A couple of weeks earlier, I'd found 3 sparrows near my shed. I figured they'd flown into the window or gotten caught by something. Then last week, there were 4 more, closer to the fence, same area she was talking about now. It felt weird, sure, but not intentional. Not like this. But standing there with Dana, looking at that bag, hearing the pattern out loud. Sunday mornings, same stretch of fence, it stopped feeling random. Show me exactly where you found them, I said, already reaching for my phone out of habit, like documenting it would somehow make it make sense. She nodded and walked along her side of the fence, and I followed on mine, the wooden boards between us suddenly feeling less like a boundary and more like something hiding a problem neither of us understood yet. We stopped at roughly the same spot, maybe 10 feet wide. Nothing special about it at first glance, just grass, a few weeds, the usual patches where things don't grow perfectly. Except, when I looked closer, it wasn't normal. The grass there had these odd brown spots, not spread out evenly like drought damage, but clustered, almost like something had been poured or sprayed in specific areas. I crouched down again, brushing my fingers lightly over one of the patches, and that's when I felt it, a faint stickiness, like residue that hadn't fully dried. I brought my fingers closer to my nose before I could stop myself, and yeah, that was a mistake. The smell was sharp, chemical, unmistakable. Not fertilizer, not anything you'd use casually. It was the kind of scent that comes with warning labels and gloves and instructions you're not supposed to ignore. This isn't from my garden, I said quietly, more to myself than to her at first, but then louder, firmer. I've never used anything like this. Dana had gone pale. Then where is it coming from? I stood up slowly, looking at the fence, really looking at it this time. The gaps between boards, the slight warping in the wood, the line where our properties met. And for the first time since she'd walked over, I felt something colder than confusion, something that sat heavier in my chest. Someone's been putting it here, I said. On purpose. She let out a small, shaky laugh like she wanted that to sound ridiculous, like it had to be, but it didn't land. Why would anyone do that? I didn't have an answer. Not a good one, anyway. We just stood there for a second, both of us staring at the same stretch of fence, the same patches of dying grass, and I think we both realized it at the same time. This wasn't an accident, and it wasn't new. Whoever was doing it had come back more than once. They knew exactly where to go, and they didn't care what got hurt in the process. I pulled my phone out again, this time not for pictures. I'm calling it in, I said. Non-emergency, but this isn't right. Dana nodded quickly, already backing away toward her house. I'm taking the kids inside. As she walked off, I stayed there a second longer, staring at that fence, at that exact spot where everything seemed to center, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't just dealing with a problem in the yard anymore. We were dealing with a person, and whoever they were, they'd been standing right here. The dispatcher told me someone would come out to take a look, not urgent priority, but concerning enough, which I guess is the official way of saying they didn't think we were crazy, but they weren't rushing either. So I waited, pacing a little, glancing at that same stretch of fence like it might suddenly explain itself if I stared long enough, like maybe I'd missed something obvious. The smell lingered too, faint but sharp, and every time the breeze shifted it hit just enough to remind me this wasn't in my head. Dana came back out once, just for a second, standing on her porch with her arms crossed tight, like she didn't trust the yard anymore. "You really didn't use anything?" she called out, not accusing this time, just needing to hear it again. "No," I said, probably quicker than necessary. "Nothing. I wouldn't risk my own garden. Or your kids." She nodded, but there was still something unsettled in her face, and honestly I couldn't blame her. If I'd been in her position, I might have assumed the same thing. About 30 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up slow, tires crunching against the gravel at the edge of the property. The officer who stepped out introduced herself as Officer Maya Chun, calm, observant, the kind of presence that makes things feel a little more real just by being there. She listened while we explained everything, didn't interrupt, just nodded occasionally, and took notes like she'd done this 100 times before. "Show me the area," she said when we finished. We walked her over to the fence, and I could tell the moment she got close that she noticed the same things we had. The grass, the discoloration, the residue. She crouched down, put on gloves, and gently pressed her fingers into the soil like she was testing something we couldn't see. "This doesn't look like standard lawn treatment," she said after a moment. "Too concentrated. Too localized." Dana shifted next to me. "So someone did this." Officer Chin didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood up and started walking along the fence line, slow, deliberate, eyes scanning every inch of what like it might tell her a story. And then, about halfway across that 10-foot stretch, she stopped. "Here," she said. I stepped closer, leaning in, and at first I didn't see it, just two boards slightly misaligned. But then she pointed, and suddenly it clicked. There was a narrow gap, maybe 2 inches wide, just enough space for a hand to slip through. The edges of the wood were scraped, rough, like they'd been forced apart more than once. I felt something tighten in my chest. Officer Chen reached out, careful not to touch too much, and angled her flashlight into the gap, even though it was broad daylight. "Residue on both sides," she said. "See the staining here and here." Dana leaned in from her side, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh my God! Whoever had done this hadn't just sprayed randomly. They'd stood on one side and deliberately pushed through the fence, hitting both yards at once. Mine. Hers. Exactly where the birds were dying. Exactly where her kids played. "They're not coming from your yard," Officer Chin said, looking at me now. "They're coming from behind it." Behind my property was a narrow strip of woods, nothing dense, but enough to give someone cover if they didn't want to be seen. We all turned to look at it at the same time, and I swear the temperature dropped a few degrees just from the idea alone. "So someone walks through there," I said slowly, trying to picture it. "Comes up to the fence and does this?" "More than once," she replied. "Based on the damage to the boards, I'd say repeatedly." Dana wrapped her arms around herself. "At night." "That would be my guess." There was a silence after that, the kind that doesn't feel empty so much as heavy. Because now we weren't guessing anymore. Now we knew. "Do either of you have security cameras?" Officer Chen asked. I shook my head immediately. "No. I never thought I'd need one." Dana hesitated for half a second, then nodded. "We installed one last month. It faces the backyard." That changed everything. We went inside her house, all three of us, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted from uneasy to focused. There's something about reviewing footage that makes things feel clinical, almost like you're dissecting a moment instead of living in it. Dana pulled up the recordings on her tablet, scrolling through clips from the past few nights. Most of them completely normal. Kids running around, her dog sniffing the fence, wind moving through the trees. Look at Saturday, Officer Chin said. Late night. Dana adjusted the timeline, fingers moving faster now, and we watched the hours tick by in silence. 9 p.m., nothing. 10:15, still nothing. 11:30. And then at 11:47, the motion sensor triggered. The screen shifted slightly, the image grainier in the low light, but clear enough. At first, all you could see was the tree line, and then movement. A figure stepped out from the shadows, slow, deliberate, like they knew exactly where they were going. I felt my heartbeat pick up without even realizing it. The person didn't hesitate. They walked straight across the yard toward the fence, stopping at that exact same spot we'd been standing earlier. There was no searching, no confusion, just certainty. Zoom in, Officer Chin said quietly. Dana tapped the screen, enlarging the image. The figure raised an arm, and even through the graininess, you could see the shape of a bottle, the motion of spraying, steady, controlled, back and forth through the gap. It went on for several seconds, longer than I expected, like they were making sure it soaked in. Then Dana zoomed in a little more, and everything stopped, because I recognized him before my brain had time to process it. Wait, I said, leaning closer. That's... Dana's hand froze midair. No way. But it was. It was Ryan Keller. He lived 2 houses down from me. Quiet guy, kept to himself mostly, except for that one time a few months back when he didn't. I felt this strange mix of disbelief and something sharper, something that made my jaw tighten. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. Officer Chin didn't react right away, just watched the footage play out until the figure finished spraying, lowered the bottle, and disappeared back into the trees the same way he came. Calm, unhurried, like it was routine. You know him? She asked. Yeah, I said, still staring at the screen. I mean, not well, but yeah. Dana looked between us. Who was that? I hesitated for just a second, and in that pause, everything from a few months ago came rushing back. The conversation, the tone, the look on his face when things didn't go the way he expected. That's my neighbor, I said finally. Ryan. And suddenly, this wasn't random anymore. Not even a little. For a second, nobody said anything. The video kept looping silently on Dana's tablet, that same moment over and over, Ryan stepping out of the trees like he belonged there, like this was just another part of his routine, and I could feel something shifting inside me. Not fear exactly. Not yet. More like clarity, the kind that settles in your gut before your brain catches up. Are you sure? Officer Chin asked, still calm, but more focused now, like the situation had just crossed an invisible line. Yeah, I said, and this time there was no hesitation. That's him. Dana looked at me like she was trying to connect pieces she didn't even know existed. Why would he do that? And that question, it landed harder than everything else, because now I had to say it out loud, and once I did, there was no pretending this was just some weird coincidence anymore. A few months ago, I started, leaning back against the counter, arms crossed tighter than I realized. He asked me out. Dana blinked. Wait, what? It wasn't a big thing, I said quickly, though even as I said it, I knew that wasn't entirely true. We talked a couple times, just neighbor stuff, you know, trash day, weather, nothing serious. Then one evening, he just went for it. Asked if I wanted to grab drinks. And I said no. Simple as that. Or at least it should have been. He didn't take it well. I added, the memory coming back clearer now, sharper. Not yelling or anything. But his whole demeanor changed. Like I'd insulted him just by not being interested. Dana's expression tightened. What did he say? I let out a slow breath. Something along the lines of, you'll regret acting like you're better than people. Officer Chin's eyes flicked toward me. Did he make any other threats? At the time, it didn't feel like one, I said. Just bitter. Awkward. I figured he'd cool off. But he hadn't. I found my garden hose sliced a week later. I continued, the details lining up now in a way they hadn't before. Thought it was just wear and tear. Then my pepper plants got trampled. I blamed raccoons or something. It felt easier than assuming someone was doing it on purpose. Dana shook her head slowly, almost like she was replaying every small strange thing in her own yard too. And now he's poisoning the fence. Not just the fence, I said quietly. Both yards. Everything that crosses it. And that's when the weight of it really hit. Not just the birds, not just my garden, but her kids. Barefoot, playing right there, exactly where he'd been spraying. Dana covered her mouth, eyes wide. My kids. Officer Chin straightened slightly, her tone shifting into something more official. I'm going to need a copy of this footage, she said. And I'd recommend both of you stay inside for now. The next hour moved fast, almost too fast to process properly. Another unit arrived, then another. They took statements, collected samples, photographed the fence, the gap, the residue. All of it suddenly felt bigger than just our little stretch of yard. And then they went to get him. I didn't see the actual arrest, but I heard about it later that night. Ryan was in his garage when they showed up, like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't been sneaking through the woods poisoning 2 properties over the past few weeks. They found the bottles first, industrial-grade pesticide, the kind you don't just pick up casually. Then gloves, stained dark along the fingertips. And then, the notebook. That part stuck with me more than anything. Page after page of notes about me. My schedule, when I watered my plants, when I usually came outside, what days I stayed in, what days I didn't. There were entries about the garden too, when it started thriving, when I added new plants, even guesses about what I might be growing next. Dana told me one line specifically because she knew I'd want to know, and also probably because she didn't know what else to do with it. Increased dosage so she notices this time. I remember just sitting there after she said that, staring at nothing in particular, trying to reconcile the version of Ryan I'd casually waved to a few times with the person who wrote that sentence. He wasn't just angry. He was escalating. The charges came quickly after that. Reckless endangerment, animal cruelty, trespassing, stalking. Each one sounding heavier than the last when you hear them all together. He pled guilty in the end, which somehow made it feel both simpler and worse at the same time. No trial, no drawn-out process, just a straight acknowledgement that, yeah, he did all of it. 3 years. That's what he got. Some people said it wasn't enough. Others said it was fair. I don't know. I'm still not sure where I land on that. Because how do you measure something like that? The intent, the planning, the fact that he didn't care who got hurt as long as I noticed? After everything settled down, things in the neighborhood changed, not dramatically, but enough that you could feel it. Dana and I installed cameras, motion lights, the whole setup. We started talking more too, checking in, not just about the yard but about everything. Funny how something like that can turn strangers into allies almost overnight. The birds stopped showing up after his arrest. Just completely stopped. No more Sunday mornings with that quiet, unsettling discovery. My garden came back slowly, patch by patch, like it needed time to trust the soil again. And Dana's kids, they're back out there now, running along the fence like nothing ever happened. Laughing, barefoot, free in a way that feels earned, I guess. But every now and then, usually late at night when things are quiet, I catch myself looking toward that same stretch of fence, that same exact spot, and thinking about how close it all was. How easy it would have been to miss the pattern, to keep brushing things off. And more than that, I think about how well we think we know the people living just a few houses away. Because Ryan wasn't some stranger passing through. He was right there the whole time. So here's what I keep coming back to, and I'm honestly curious what you think. If someone crosses that line, not just once but over and over, planning it, escalating it, at what point does it stop being a mistake and start becoming something unforgivable? And if you were in my position, would 3 years feel like justice or just a pause?